What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Rezolve AI. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down on what is moving it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Rezolve's down 2.08%, 279 the low, 296 the high, and 9 million shares being traded. During the pre-market, you actually did see Rezolve top 10 most heavily traded, so it was getting a lot of volume then, but since kind of that point, once the market did open, it kind of fell off quite significantly. We did see some volatility first thing, and that's because of Rezolve putting out their news. So I'll kind of go over that in a second, but ultimately the broader market is kind of pulling back slightly because of this. So we did have GDP coming in at 4.3 versus a forecast of 3.2. So generally that is phenomenal data. Market doesn't want phenomenal right now, or it doesn't really want horrific. It doesn't want extreme moves. It wants a minor meet or a minor beat. That is pretty much it, because then that way it can kind of justify a rate cut. This in the eyes of Wall Street isn't going to be a good reason to kind of justify a cut for the upcoming January 28th meeting. So all in all, the market's kind of throwing a little bit of a hissy fit, and not really justified in my opinion, because if the data is showing this strong, then there's no real reason to complain, but what do I know? So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. Aside from that, we also did have ADP weekly coming in at 11,000. Market didn't really seem to care all that much. So as per usual, this for face value doesn't actually affect Rezolve, because they don't really do that much kind of interacting with American business and so forth. Hopefully that will change in 2026 and whatever else, but Rezolve does get moved through algorithmic trading, and this is why you see a lot of algorithmic trading. So from the flow, a lot of smaller transactions. So AI is kind of moving Rezolve back and forth. Aside from that though, like I mentioned, Rezolve did put out news early this morning, and that was this right here. So Rezolve AI accelerates global momentum with live enterprise deployments, major renewals, and expanding pipeline into 2026. So this is more of a precursor, so people can kind of take this information and try to determine how their upcoming January 13th call is going to be, right? Because they're going to be going over 2025, kind of how that went, and targets for 2026. So most likely they'll be raising their guidance from 500 million to, I would assume, about 650. That's kind of where I feel things will be. But realistically, this news, in my kind of unpopular opinion, isn't a good reason to buy Rezolve. And because we already generally know that they have a lot of business, because why else would they be so far guiding 500 million for 2026? So I think just they are trying to sell themselves. And I know everything I say is usually, it's accurate, but it's unpopular opinion, because people don't want to hear kind of grayness, right? They just want to hear, hey, Rezolve's going to $10 next week, get in now. That's what people honestly want to hear. But I personally feel that Rezolve is trying too hard to sell themselves. They're kind of acting as though that they have to prove something to shareholders, whereas they don't. Like the whole upcoming January 13th call, that is to kind of prove that, hey, you know what, we actually are going to be raising guidance and we're doing good. This also does as well. It's unnecessary, but it's them trying to prove to Wall Street that, hey, we actually do have business. We're not just a scam or whatever people are saying. I myself, I don't see Rezolve being a scam whatsoever. It's just they kind of portray themselves in a very interesting light. And so I think in reality, this news today is good, but generally logical investors already knew that they have a lot of business, right? Because, or else why would they be guiding what they have done for 2025 and 2026? So let me know your thoughts on that. Like I said, I know it's unpopular opinion. A lot of people are going to hate on me for saying that, but honestly, it's the truth. And sometimes people, like I said, don't want to hear the truth. Aside from all that though, shorts are returning about 18,000 shares. So they're not really doing too much. 16.09% of the free float is being shorted, works to be 19.1 million shares overall being shorted. This is something, and was my kind of fear I mentioned to you probably a couple of weeks back, is that Rezolve is starting to get on shorts' radar. And we've seen a lot of stocks that aren't profitable luckily enough, fly under the radar. They're able to just do and trade accordingly. Institutions and retail can kind of trade in harmony, and then shorts all of a sudden just come in and just disrupt everything. That is starting to happen with Rezolve. So right now, like I said, 16.09% is definitely a massive jump up from what it has been. So right now, looks like it was a increase of about 18.15% just over the last little bit. So things are starting to not look the greatest. Again, just to put in comparison, so November the 19th, short interest was around 4.97%. So they, in the span of roughly around a month and a half, they've definitely tripled down. So not necessarily the best. Aside from all of that though, looking at the options, 522,000 in calls, 130,000 in puts, so kind of low volume. But then again, it kind of matches with the common stock. 63% of all the options being done are bullish in nature. From a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around $3. And looks like for the week ending May 15th, 2026, for it to be roughly around $3.50 and above. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub kind of $3. And then for that same week, for it to be sub $2.50. So we'll have to wait and see how that does play out. On the secondary market, only 3 transactions above $100,000. So big money is not really doing too much. As I mentioned, most of the volume is coming from algorithmic trading, but based on this, we are seeing 2 sells and 1 buy. That 1 buy was for 360,000. Aside from that though, these are some of the transactions occurring on the dark pool. So normally dark pool is kind of used by shorts and hedge funds. Hedge funds are kind of the hold numbers, so that 35,000, that most likely was a hedge fund. Everything else is probably linked to shorts. And as I kind of pointed out, shorts are returning about 18,000 shares. That is just net. They've already traded back and forth. They've done their trades and go do what they do. So that right there is net. Aside from all of that though, with it at 282, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. So 271 is going to be a key support. You really want to watch for it to hold today. In all honesty, I think that the worst is kind of behind us for today. Larger institutions will probably realize that this sell-off is unjustified because of very phenomenal data. Who really cares about a January cut when the data is coming in solid? That's just my probably unpopular opinion again. But still, nonetheless, for today, just watch for 271 and then 337 being the next strong target / resistance. If you're wanting to kind of dollar cost average or swing trade, looking at the 4 hour, right now it is trading between these 2 points. So this R1 and the pivot, so 274 and then 323. So very similar to the 1 day. Aside from that, on the actual chart itself, this is where it's still looking a little bit better than a lot of other growth stocks. So right now it is above that 10-day moving average, and that's currently sitting at 261, but smack dab in the middle between this 200 and that 10-day moving average. So most likely it's going to kind of stick within this range up until we get a good catalyst. Whether that be, there's not really anything for the rest of the week because tomorrow the market does close early. Thursday, the market's closed because of Christmas, so Merry Christmas to all that celebrate. And then Friday, historically, we see lower volume, and there's no real substantial data points coming out at that time. So most likely for this week, we'll kind of stick within this range. So for those of you that like doing options, it might be a good time to possibly sell a covered call or possibly even sell a put if you're wanting to maybe buy a little bit more. And then depending on your risk, you can kind of choose the outer edges of these ranges, so the 200 and the 10-day moving average. But aside from that, next week, this is where we could have a good opportunity to really move higher, because I'm sure there's going to be a certain level of FOMO leading into that analyst and investor call on the 13th. And hopefully that'll be enough to push it to that 50-day moving average. So all in all, pretty interesting stuff. So good that Rezolve's putting out news. But I think right now they need to stop really proving themselves and just kind of show more American expansion. That's what I care about, because everything that they showed was not really kind of oriented there. Aside from all of that fun stuff, if you're looking for some solid on-point day trades, pop over to my stacked account. I just lowered it down to $1.50. I just made a new tier. So if you're looking for some solid day trades, pop over there. It's $1.50 a month, and it will never increase after the new year. you'll go back to kind of the 21, or even if you want the all buy signals like options and everything else, I have 104 members under the buy signals, $54.99 a month. So again, take advantage of that promo while you can. Link to that is in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.